Hi everyone, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and I'm excited to be back again to talk about another fantastic Star Trek book. This time we're talking about Time for Yesterday by A.C. Crispin. Now, I finished this book yesterday, and this book is the direct sequel to Yesterday's Sun by A.C. Crispin. And as you can see, the sequel quite a bit thicker as well too. Uh, this book is awesome. I love this book so much. I was so excited to learn that there was a sequel. So I was so glad to jump into this, and it didn't miss a beat. It picked up with all the same pace and style and just everything that I loved about the first book was right in here in the second one. Which just leads me to believe that A.C. Crispin is probably just one of my favorite Star Trek writers of all time. So I'm excited also to read Sarek soon, which is the last novel that she had wrote. Unfortunate to learn that there was only, I think, 4 Star Trek novels that she wrote, because she was just so good. So anyway, let's get into Star Trek Time for Yesterday by A.C. Crispin. Time in the galaxy has stopped running in its normal course. That can mean only one thing. The Guardian of Forever is malfunctioning. To save the universe, Starfleet Command reunites 3 of its most legendary figures: Admiral James T. Kirk, Spock of Vulcan, and Dr. Leonard McCoy, and sends them on a desperate mission to contact the Guardian. A journey that ultimately takes them 5,000 years into the past. They must find Spock's son Zar once again and bring him back to their time to telepathically communicate with the Guardian. But Zar is enmeshed in troubles of his own, and soon Kirk, Spock, and McCoy find themselves in a desperate struggle to save both their world and his. Bum, bum, bum. So, if that doesn't draw you in already, let me just tell you, this book is just so fun. One of the things I think I like most about it is that it never goes away from the action. It is basically just each chapter just continues on with the story. There's no padding, nothing behind like to fill it out. It just keeps the beat and keeps on moving. And honestly, it reminds me a lot of like reading like the old pulp stories, like Tarzan or John Carter of Mars, that kind of stuff. It really gets me drawn into the story kind of in that same way that those books did. So jumping right in, this is set about 15 years after the original Yesterday's Sun. And so this puts it, I think, basically right between the motion picture and the Wrath of Khan. And this actually kind of leads directly up to the Wrath of Khan even. The prologue starts with kind of introducing you to the world that Zar is living in now. And it's kind of like a medieval world. He's trying to do his best to bring it around. He's basically being assailed on all sides by many different tribes there, all coming in. It's not looking good. So his second in command, his second in war, who is one of his good friends, and his name is Cletus. I called him Cletus the whole time. I hope that's right. Anyway, Cletus, the second in war, has like a small conference with Zar here in the epilogue, just to kind of like lay out the framework that they are in trouble, and there's many different tribes that are assailing him there on Sarpedon. He is trying to advance the people, but there are all these other people that kind of want to bring everything down. So he's in trouble there, and they do have a plan possibly, but it's not something he's interested in, and it's possibly having to do like a marriage with one of the enemy daughters. So they kind of open up that way, give you that little bit of a prologue, and then they jump right into the action. So chapter 1, Kirk is summoned by Admiral Morrow. There is big trouble in space. So we got time waves destroying stars, mass EMP waves, and we have ships in trouble. And unfortunately, one of those ships is called the Kismet, and the passenger aboard, none other than Leonard Bones McCoy. So Kirk has been summoned to get out there and do what he does best, which is to figure out what's going on and save everybody. So the search begins. Kirk does find the ship, and there's an exciting like escape scene where the ship is completely without power. so they have to communicate with them another way. So they shoot some phasers like right off the bow to get their attention, and then Bones and the remaining alive crew there of the Kismet have this exciting like EV suit scene where they have to leave the broken down ship and fly up to the Enterprise and escape that way. So once Bones is aboard, they're talking more about how time is getting messed up, even worse and worse, and they need to figure out a way to do something. It turns out that there's actually an entire planet, planet Kent, which is in danger of destruction, so they have to assist with the evacuation of that. So they get there as quick as they can and try to evacuate as many people. And the planet is destroyed. They're able to save some people, but a lot of people do die. And in fact, the whole ship, the Constellation, is destroyed. So it's a pretty big event. You have maybe about 1,000 people dead here, and they have to find a way to do something. They have to find a way to contact the Guardian, because they know that something is going on with time, and it's originating from there. So they kind of go back to Earth in the next chapter, regroup, and decide on their next move, which is they need a telepath to contact the Guardian. Zar was the one to do it last time in the last book, and that was kind of one of the big plot points there. But Zar's not available. As Spock says, my son died 5,000 years ago. Zar is in the past. He's gone. So they have to get another telepath, and they get a Marischal, which kind of almost remind me of, they describe it like a little wallaby or something. So they got a little wallaby, a little telepathic wallaby, who is they're going to take her there to contact the Guardian and kind of see what's going on, see if they can't bring him back around. So after they have a nail-biting approach to the planet, which is really well written, I really like, and Sulu gives it all he's got, and he gets to the planet. And they get there, and they beam down to the Guardian, and she does, and as they beam down, Spock actually realizes, as they're kind of walking up to the Guardian, that this Marischal is with Young. But even so, she decides she has to go through with it to save the universe. You got to do what you have to do. So the problem is, it's too much. It's too much to bear. So as soon as she tries to contact the Guardian, she basically goes catatonic, and she goes into a coma and actually gives birth to these Young. So now you got this other little problem of this telepathic wallaby and her babies, and that's not good. But Spock beams back down to the planet, unbeknownst to anyone else, because he wants to try himself and see if he can reach out telepathically and contact. Even though he's not as powerful as Zar was, maybe he can do something. So he beams down and he attempts to do it, and it's really hard for him. And what he is able to discover is that even though the Guardian is not there and he's not working properly, the functions of the Guardian are still available. So they can use it to still travel through time. So Kirk is not happy with him for trying that and actually sends a security team down to beam him back up. But they do decide that it works, and the very best plan, really the only thing that they can do to try to bring the Guardian back, is to travel to the past, to Sarpedon, get Zar, and ask him to come and try to mind meld and get the Guardian working back in order. And that's what they do. So they go back down, they speak with the Guardian, which is basically just kind of broken down to like the base function of time travel, and they're able to analyze the history of Sarpedon and find the right moment to jump in. And they do that, and they jump in and they travel back in time, and they are back on Sarpedon. And they land basically right in the worst spot. They land right in the middle of Heldian's camp, and Heldian is one of the tribespeople that's getting ready to assault Zar and his kingdom. So they land in the middle of a rainstorm, so they're uncomfortable, they are wet, and they are cold, and they are immediately captured, tied up, thrown on the ground. And it's just another example of how good the writing is, because you really can... The detail just in this chapter of like how she talks about how they feel and everything is just so well done. So they are caught and they are captured, and they do see that they hear something coming, and it turns out that this camp is actually the camp that in the epilogue that they were talking about raiding to possibly get this wife to complete this kind of deal and get a little bit more help for Tsar. So, in the end of that chapter, these troops come flying in. They kidnap the priestess. Her name is Wynn, and she is the daughter of the chief Heldian. And then they also take Kirk, Spock, and Bones right out of there, and they jail them in Tsar's kingdom, which is called New Erin, thinking that they were some kind of like spies or something that were caught. The Second War, whoever is not really familiar, he doesn't know who they are yet. So they get a little bit of a chapter where they're in jail and kind of trying to figure out what to do. But when the Second War does come down and they do talk to him, they can't convince him of anything. He doesn't think that they know Tsar or anything like that. At the last moment, Bones thinks to pull off Spock's hat and show him his ears, and boom, that does it. So Cletus runs up, gets Tsar. Tsar comes down, and there you go. So now Kirk, Spock, and Bones have met up with Tsar. They get a supper. They get a wash. They get cleaned up. They get nice. And during all these chapters as well, Tsar has met and proposed to Wynn. So basically, the idea is it's kind of like a ceremonial marriage, just something to save his kingdom, and then would give peace to the people, and then give her the kingdom also kind of going forward. Now, it has been prophesized by Wynn that in this coming battle, Tsar will die. And I haven't said that yet, but that's important because she is, as like the priestess of this religion, one of the things she does is has these visions of the future, and in this vision she saw that Tsar will die. Now, also, I've not to mention this yet, Spock has watched the history of Sarpatan on his tricorder, and he's seen in that history Tsar get struck down and die. So he has seen that as well. So it's kind of like this foregone conclusion, and even Tsar knows this, and it's kind of like one of the themes at this point in the book is like this railing against the inevitable. Like he knows he's going to die. Like what's the point even try to do something else to get past that point that he knows is going to happen. So anyway, I digress. So Kirk, Spock, and Bones have a lovely chat with Tsar. They kind of give him the whole story about what's going on, but as I said, because of his fatalism, he doesn't really want to go back with them at this point. Now, Kirk, Spock, and Bones agree to help him with his issue that he has going on now, which is agreeing to get Heldian to work with him since he's going to be marrying his daughter now. And Wynn did say yes. And the other thing is, in the middle of this nice Star Trek book with this medieval fantasy, you get these lovely little scenes of very well written romance too. So you got these two characters who don't even really know each other very well, but through this kind of psychic connection that they both have, they kind of quickly fall in love. And it's just written so good that it's not cheesy or bad or anything. It's just good. And it really, really... you actually feel it, even though it's not developed or built in any way. So I thought that was really good. Just consulting my notes here real quick. But anyway, they do go to the negotiations, and it's incredibly successful. And that is in part due to Spock, who is there as kind of acting as Tsar's kind of negotiator, basically. So because of his quick skill and logic, they're able to negotiate a settlement and a marriage, a hand fasting, as they call it there. And they do that immediately. I think they're basically married that night. And just another thing, the ceremony that they describe, just very quickly, she laid out this really cool ceremony for these medieval people to have, where their marriage ceremony is that they have their hands actually tied together, and then they have the bride side and the groom side ceremonially pull them apart, trying to pull them apart, and the bonds aren't supposed to break. And of course they do that and they don't break, and it's a really nice, just interesting little scene here in the middle of this Star Trek fantasy book, So after the wedding, it actually turns out they realize that they do actually love each other. So it's not just a marriage of convenience for both of them. They have deep feelings for each other, and that also helps Czar realize that his duty, and Wynn helps him realize this as well. It's his duty to return, his duty to help uh, basically go back and fix the Guardian, because the universe is in trouble and it's only going to get worse from there. So he's going to have to do something. So the idea basically is that he will be able to go back with Kirk, Spock, and Bones, and then return immediately to the point when he left using the Guardian, and then lead his people into this battle, this upcoming battle. So, because even though he has like this Heldian on his side now, there's still, I think, 2 other tribes that are coming to assail him, and the odds are stacked against him, even now, even with the additional help. But now we're going back to the future. So they agree to go back, and they go back to the Enterprise and make contact, or they go back to Sarpedon. No. They go back to Gateway. Gateway, that's the name of the planet where the Guardian is, and make contact with the Guardian of Forever. And it's not easy, and it takes kind of everything that Czar has, and then even with some help from Spock as well, to make this contact and reach him wherever he is. And he's like multiple like dimensions and planes away. And this is where this book really gets crazy. So you start out, you got like Star Trek, you got the Enterprise, you're evacuating, you got some EV suit escapes, fun stuff. Then you got some castles, some battles there. They're riding something like a bird around, I don't know. And then you got some love scenes. And then here we go. Now we're getting full-on space sci-fi craziness. So it turns out what the Guardian was doing this whole time was getting his creators at their own behest. They contacted him, and it was his job to get them and bring them back to this original universe. And these creators call themselves the Originators. And when they first appeared, basically it's like an explosion of sound and color, and no one can handle it. And everyone has to duck away from the Guardian entrance because it's just like this explosion of sound and color and madness, and nobody can handle it. So everyone kind of ducks away at first, and then eventually these Originators kind of like calm themselves down, and they take the forms of various people, from the minds of Kirk, Spock, Bones, and Czar. So one of them takes the form of Sam Kirk, which I thought was kind of cool, considering his recent appearance in the new series, Strange New Worlds. So that's who I was picturing, of course. They take the form of Zarabeth. One takes the form of Gary Mitchell. One takes the form of T'Pau. One takes the form of Joanna, McCoy's ex-wife. And then one takes like this weird flaming form, and it's like kind of like the evil one. So these beings, these Originators, apparently created the Guardian, possibly created the whole universe, long, long ago, and since then have left our universe and have been searching multiple other universes for just whatever, things to do, because that's what they do. And there are a total of 8 of these creatures left now, and they decided, since they are close to like the end of their time, they want to come back to this original universe. So they summoned the Guardian to bring them back, and because of that, the Guardian was drawn away from his duties. All that time nonsense happened. All those people died, and that's what was going on. So now they're back, and they have these scenes where the Guardians, or the Originators, are talking to Kirk, Spock, Bones, and Czar about what their plans are. And they wanted to come back and basically find where they were from. So they're asking for help, and they're asking actually for the Enterprise. And they're saying it could take thousands of years to find what they're looking for. So Kirk, Spock, Bones, and Czar, they don't like this. And basically decided it's time to talk them down. So they send Kirk in to, and this is like just classic great Star Trek. This is how like they solve a problem. He goes up to them, and you can kind of tell that there's a few that are like rational, some that are less rational, and some that are just crazy violent. So he appeals to the rational ones using logic, and just basically says, your return has caused the deaths of thousands of these people, thousands of people. Is this what you wanted, And through telling them what their actions did, he's able to convince the reasonable ones to take everybody and leave, because being in this universe, these super powerful beings, it just won't be good. They'll do nothing but harm, and they just need to go to another universe. And just through the power of his words, Kirk's powerful speech, he's able to convince them of that. So these originators kind of all join up into one glump and do go back through the Guardian and are sent to like another universe where they're not going to return. But after everyone thinks it's all good, Zara gets another like telepathic thought, and the two worst ones have stayed behind. And now you get a little bit of a horror scene because they come in and turn themselves into kind of like awful like demon monster things, you know. One of them actually takes the form of Kirk's mother, who recently passed away, and then like turns and makes it like a ghoul, you know. So you know, nicely written little bad scenes there. But with the help of the Guardians, Zar and Spock are able to banish these beings back. And even in the end, when it was just feeling like they didn't have enough strength, Bones and Kirk even got up and kind of threw their final mental energy into it to get them out of there. So those little chapters, I think that's chapters like 11 and 12 and 13. It's just kind of this little detour into this weird sci-fi world. And it's fun and it's crazy and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I love it. So the originators are gone. They're sent to another world, another universe. The Guardian has kind of taken over and helped and realized that, you know, those were bad. Those were bad for the universe, and he did his job to help send them away. So now we're back on the Enterprise, and they convinced Zar that instead of returning immediately, you know, to the planet and to the battle, that he should heal up and rehab. He has a lame left leg, and McCoy thinks that he could fix that for him, and just give him some time to recuperate and get stronger. So you got these great scenes, a couple chapters here, where they're on the Enterprise and Zar is rehabbing. He's spending time with the crew of the Enterprise. He's doing some training with Sulu, getting some fencing lunge practice, and a great little scene with Uhura, who's kind of taken over and being in charge of watching over Debarian. That's the telepathic animal, and the babies. And she's still in a coma, but with the help of Zar, who's on the ship, and Uhura and Spock, they're able to kind of bring her out of the coma. And this great scene with Uhura kind of showing her own babies to bring her back. And just like I said, another nice little side detour in the story. Short and sweet, adds to it, and just is very fun. And they bring them back, and the babies are good, and so you get the mom and the babies back together. Zar is able to help, and Uhura is able to lend a big hand too in doing that. Now, we're getting down to the final nitty-gritty here. The 5 weeks are up. Kirk, Spock, and Bones, they want him to stay longer. Of course they do. They don't want him to leave. So they have this final little talk, you know, with Zar, but he says, no, I have to go. He's going to leave, and he is going to leave. So they say their goodbyes, and he heads back down to Gateway and heads through the Guardian to the battle. So then they have, I also like how she wrote the battle scene, because it was, okay, so this is chapter 14, so I'm referencing this specifically. Chapter 14, Time for Yesterday. Whoa, what a good chapter. Like, I'm probably going to go read it again. But anyway, the chapter starts out with like battle preparations, getting your armor on. He's talking to Wynn, his wife, his kind of final talk before battle. The talk of, even though they're experienced soldiers and they've been in many battles, still like the nervous feeling in their gut is still there. Really, really well done stuff. And then when the battle begins, it kind of cuts. It cuts into like right into mid-battle. So then Zar is on his way to reinforce this line that is kind of collapsing. And this whole lead up through this battle is just so well done. It just kind of follows his whole charge with his troops up there, and then losing his mount, hand-to-hand combat through the troops, and then hand-to-hand combat with Rorgan Deathhand, this like monstrous guy who's got like a mace instead of a hand. And just like I said, just one of the best written battle scenes that I've ever read in my life. And I've read a lot of really great battle scenes, and this one was just so well done. And such a good ending too. And I won't get too into that, but just so good. But anyway, Zar lives maybe. Chapter 15, it turns out Spock has actually beamed down to the planet. He could not let Tsar go it alone. This is his son. He's got to go after him, all right? So he beams down to the planet after him, okay? And so this whole chapter is basically Spock going through like the outskirts of the battle with these dead and dying soldiers and getting closer and closer to the action, closer and closer having to kind of fight off people. He knows what he's looking for, like the area that he knows that his son probably was going to die in. He gets there just at the last moment, and he sees that this guy is raises his axe to strike Tsar in the head, and he throws his wahoon, but he misses, and he gets the guy on the neck instead, and he still hits Tsar in the head and knocks him out. But Spock is able to kill the guy. He didn't want to do that. That was an accident. But he missed, and he wasn't able to stop the blow. So Tsar is completely knocked out, and the enemy troops are thinking that, wow, now we're going to rout them, and the morale is going down for all of Tsar's troops. Basically, the prophecy that was given was that he who was struck down will rise again. So, realizing that they have to make the prophecy be fulfilled so they can complete and win the battle, they very quickly kind of make a circle around the body with soldiers, and they dress Spock up in Tsar's uniform. And then Spock heads up on this hill and raises up his sword and yells, "Victory!" And all the soldiers cheer and everybody's happy, and they're able to kind of mount their final charge and go through and win the battle. And man, it was just so cool. Like, what a fun little scene. Like, it's something that you wouldn't expect would be so cool, and it just really was. At the end, you have a very well-written, touching scene between Spock and Tsar, their final goodbyes. They know they're never going to see each other again after this. Wow. Really well done. So then, the epilogue. We're leading into something. So Kirk, Spock, and Bones are having brandy in Kirk's quarters. Kirk is talking, he's reminiscing about Carol and David in his mind. Spock has the option, before he left Gateway, he recorded the history of Sarpatan one more time to see what happened to Tsar. And he has the tricorder in his hand, and he decides he's going to delete it. Because he doesn't want to know. And he knows, Tsar's going to have a good life, Just, wow. So good. It's a great ending to the book, too, because it kind of directly does lead into the Wrath of Khan, with Spock talking to Kirk about coming to see the Kobayashi Maru, come and oversee that. So, really fun ending. Makes me want to go watch Wrath of Khan after this, actually. But man, wow! Jeez, 27 minutes already. This book is so good, everybody. So, you have to read both of them, okay? And I'm going to recommend that you do. So, start with Yesterday's Sun, and then read this one. This one, because of the lack of time, it took me about 2 weeks to get through it. This one I read when I was on vacation. I read it in a single day, and it was glorious. If I had like a day and a half to dedicate to this and just read it all in one big chunk, it would be so good too. So, 10 out of 10. This is such a good book. Looking forward to reading Sarek, the last book by Asa Crispin for Star Trek. And also looking forward to digging into some of the history, because apparently there was some kind of manuscript written for the third Yesterday's Sun book. So maybe a little bit more we can find out about something that maybe she wrote, and maybe there's a little bit more to the story that we can find out. So again, I couldn't recommend this book more. I don't know where we're going to go next. We might be doing some more TNG books. We might go in a whole different directions. We'll see. Anyway, hey, thank you so much for watching. As always, live long and prosper, and we'll see you next time. Bye.